I don't want to see that thing coming, dude.
You don't
I don't
think
want to have
so?
I don't want to have 1 second to be like, oh, here it comes. I just want to just fade to black. Just that'd be nice.
Alright, hey everybody, welcome back. Sorry this one took so long to get out to you. It's not because it took this long to make, it's just that when I bought the game on day one, it looked like this. Or if I was really lucky, like this. Turns out it was running off the wrong GPU, which wasn't a huge deal except when I went into the settings to fix it and the game simply refused to do what it's told. So I decided to put it on the shelf and went to work min-maxing my Deep Rock Galactic builds instead. And having unlocked the next branch in the autism skill tree a few weeks later, I knew I had to figure this out. So, 90 minutes of troubleshooting and 2 playthroughs later, here we are. With all that said, I'll cut to the chase. Way back in April of 2022, I posted a 25-minute mental breakdown disguised as a review, where I tore apart the story, atmosphere, gameplay, world building, and really every other aspect of Amnesia Rebirth. It is, to this day, the most hypercritical video I've ever made, and while that review would look quite a bit different if I were to do it now, I stand by pretty much every single thing I said. I did, however, end the video by stating, with all of this said, I still believe in Frictional. I'm still a fan. And it's not fair to call Rebirth outright terrible so much as disappointing. This just feels like an amateur imitation of what I know Frictional can do. Fast forward to June of this year, and Jesus fucking Christ, am I glad I didn't give up hope. I spent all that time complaining about Frictional's design choices, but I am now ecstatic to tell you that literally none of the issues I had with Rebirth are present in Amnesia the Bunker. They legitimately fixed everything, and have, for the third time in their studio's history, released one of the best horror games in recent memory. So I know I am, once again, a little late to the party on this one, but let's look at what I'm assuming will be the comeback story of the year, starting with the story. Also, spoilers from here on out, so if you're the type that likes to play things blind and you haven't gotten around to this one, I will talk to you later. So relative to Frictional's past games, Bunker is exceptionally light on story after the first 10 minutes or so. We play as Henry, a French soldier fighting the Germans in the trenches of World War I. Our best friend, at least in this unit full of wine-stealing assholes, is Lambert. I'm pretty sure these names are pronounced differently in French, but I'm a normal human, so I'm not going to worry about it. Lambert saves our life in the intro and is, by all evidence, just a really great guy. Later on in the war, Henry rigs a game of dice that they play so that Lambert is stuck on night patrol. But Lambert fucks around and falls into a giant pit full of clearly contaminated water. Henry feels terrible about rigging the game when Lambert is late to return, so he heads out to find him and subsequently pours a bit of that alien lean down his gullet. They're on the way back to the bunker, but they decide to take a quick artillery-inflicted nap. Henry falls into a relatively short coma and wakes up with a case of amnesia, but it seems like some way, somehow, you and Lambert did make it back to the bunker. Also, everyone here is dead or dying, there's viscera everywhere, something big moving in the walls, and the exit has been collapsed by the officers who abandoned you. This is the setup, and from here almost everything you'll learn about how your unit died and what really happened while you were out is told through diary entries, notes, and a bit of environmental storytelling. Compared to Soma or Rebirth and even Dark Descent, Bunker is very passive with its storytelling and has a much smaller scale. I know some people get a little peeved about receiving a story through notes, and while I don't feel the same way, I'm certainly not going to say you're wrong. I would ask what you think is the better way to convey the Bunker's simple story without sacrificing the incredible atmosphere the setting has, however. It is a very tense and lonely trek as you scour the bunker's different environments, hoping to find the items needed to make your way out, but you do get to interact with 3 other humans during your stay. The first is an old buddy having a rough go of it. The second is a noisy German prisoner who you'll probably feed to the beast or throw chlorine gas at as a fun practical joke. and the third is a batshit insane brother-in-arms who ripped out his own eyes and now blasts at anything he hears with a shotgun. It's a very quirky, colorful cast. The moral dilemmas that have been a long-running staple of Frictional's games are mostly not around in Bunker. It is possible to get what you need from the prisoner's cell while preventing him from immediately dying, but that just leaves him to die alone of dehydration a couple days later. And it is possible, although rather difficult, to bypass the eyeless man in the tunnels, but to kill him is almost a mercy. It's also possible to escape the bunker without putting an end to the beast, and this does come with its own slightly different ending cutscene. But on a blind playthrough, that's less a matter of what you choose and more so a matter of what you figure out and what you're equipped to do in the final encounter. It would be a lie for me to say I don't miss the well-written moral quandaries that Dark Descent and Soma had on offer, but Rebirth's writing and handling of morality left such a bad taste in my mouth that I would have preferred to not have them at all. So, in a sense, I suppose I got my wish. Now, from a role-playing perspective, Henry is nowhere near the level of, say, Daniel from Dark Descent, both because we know very little about who he is and what he's done, and because the game lacks any decisive character moments where we as the player get to cement who he really is. Henry is almost a blank slate character, in fact, much more than any prior Frictional protagonist. We know that he's a soldier who obviously wants to survive and go home. We know he's close friends with Lambert. We know that he rigged a dice game to get out of what should have been a relatively uneventful night patrol. We know he felt fucking terrible about it and decided he was responsible for Lambert's injury. And we know he was courageous enough to go out searching for Lambert on his own. According to all in-game evidence, we get the picture that Henry is a generally alright guy with understandable flaws, but we still know almost nothing about him. And this is the beautiful part where the player's sense of morality gets to fill in the 95% of Henry that the game doesn't tell us. With the average consumer also being a generally alright guy with understandable flaws, the fact of the matter is that the player has no issue filling in Henry's position at all, and how we feel is ultimately how we can assume Henry feels in many ways. Do you feel empathy for the German prisoner, or do you see him as the enemy? Are you hesitant to burn the corpses of your friends to make your own traversal a little easier, or does it not really faze you? When a player reaches the point in the game that they can pretty confidently infer that the beast is in fact their best friend Lambert, transformed as a result of the highly suspicious alien water that Henry fed him, I do wonder how many of them place the blame for the story's events on Henry's shoulders. After all, it was his lie that caused Lambert to be on patrol in the first place, and it was him that gave Lambert the cosmic perp. We don't know whether Henry, as a character separated from us, feels immense guilt at seeing what he's partially responsible for, but we know if we, the player, would. The bunker is less about grand moral gestures and more about what this setting and set of circumstances brings out of you. So Lambert, aka the Beast, is haunting. He doesn't have those uncanny qualities that made Dark Descent's Gatherers so iconic, and in terms of pure creep factor, I'd say he's outdone by a couple of Soma's wandering horrors, but he is a very strongly designed monster, and I love how he shows what Frictional learned from the less positive reception of Rebirth's enemies. To consolidate 80% of my issues with that game into one central complaint, it just wasn't tense or scary for the overwhelming majority of its runtime, which is a pretty big fucking problem for a horror game. And the enemies, along with their encounter design, are very much to blame. The ghouls were a little nerve-wracking in one brief section before they were fully introduced and were subsequently shoved screaming into your goddamn face for the rest of the game. Then they had these big fucking flying vagina-faced ladies, which were stupid. The Queen, stupid. The Shadow works well as a gameplay feature, but he's just a red carpet. He's not scary at all either. Then take into account that most of the enemies aren't even capable of actually harming you, and that your encounters with these guys were all a lot more scripted in how they interacted with the player than even the enemies of prior Frictional games. They were just difficult to take seriously all across the board. Lambert, on the other hand, just visually is an easy cut above. his very much still human face and the traces of who he used to be all over him, combined with his now completely frenzied and animalistic behavior, invoked in me both a fear and a sadness. The game also gives us two clear indications of Lambert trying fruitlessly to cling to his humanity. The first being that he makes his den, ergo the place he feels most comfortable, the bunker chapel. Now, of course, he slaughtered the chaplain and the place is filled with miscellaneous human gore, but it certainly wasn't chosen for its convenient central location, and I think the strong implication is that whatever shred of Lambert still exists within the beast is seeking forgiveness. Secondly, Lambert had a small plush rabbit he was eager to bring home to his young son after the war, and we can actually find it when we reach the alien lean hole from the intro. I decided to return the rabbit to him to see what might happen, and in one of my favorite horror game moments in years, the monster stops dead in his tracks to examine the rabbit, then hurries off like you were never there. It can later be recovered from the shrine within the chapel den. This is also the easiest way to kill the beast in the final encounter. Lambert is, to me, the pinnacle of quality over quantity. Well designed, terrifying, and with a strong emotional connection to our protagonist, he is more than adequate at driving the entire game's tension. But I feel a lot of love is also owed to the blind shotgunner in the tunnels. One fucking Toussaint Beaufoy, I think.
Toussaint Beaufoy.
Yeah, that's close enough. If you like to go through everyone's diary and get as much lore as you can, you'll realize how effective this guy was at sowing discontent and fear throughout the bunker before Lambert's transformation. In the tunnels near the Eldritch Drank, he was plagued by visions of a ruined alien world and immortal monsters who slaughtered by the hundreds and performed strange rituals. Eventually, this drove him mad enough to remove his eyes and seal himself deep in the tunnels, where we find him reciting his poetry and shooting at everything that moves. In a game where even my least favorite areas are still incredibly strong, Beaufoy's domain might be my favorite part of the whole package. The cosmic vapors have polluted the area so intensely that it's difficult to see very far in front of you, and you're surrounded by ghosts or spirits of some sort that make it even harder to track Beaufoy down, some of which resemble normal humans while others take the shape of Rebirth's ghouls. It is just a beautifully creepy little segment of the kind that the rest of the bunker is not. And I think the decision that Frictional made with Bunker to sort of back away from all the alien mumbo-jumbo that made Rebirth such a fucking mess, and get back to the more grounded and personal was amazing and the correct choice. But Beaufoy is a great reminder to the player that while being trapped in this bunker with the Beast might be Henry's personal hell, it is nothing compared to the rest of the horrors that the cosmos have to offer. Now, very quickly, before we dig into this section, I've gotten a small number of comments from people in the past saying they would enjoy some more, casual or playthrough type content from me, either here or on a second channel. And while I do not have that for you, I have something better. My very good friend, Mr. Grinch, runs a sort of gameplay funnies channel featuring himself, myself playing the fictional character named Ryan, and a few other friends. So it's kind of like a PBJ second channel, except I don't run it, I have no creative control over it, and slurs are not allowed. I'll play a quick clip from a recent video of his so you can sort of gauge whether it's your thing.
Jamie, can you pull up that clip?
Are you fucking high? Are we smoking crack up in here? On Torn Banner Studios? To light up the fucking crack pipe while we're making this game?
God damn it! I was in a pile of 6 of them. No pause. I forgot I'm a woman.
Does that come with any kind of debuff? The fucking jank. The jank.
No.
You guys had a whole first game to work this shit out.
Ryan, I'm right behind you. Where'd your weapon go?
Get up. I have a shield.
Okay.
I have a shield.
What was I trying to say? I was trying to say incel. It's gone. Probably for the best. Dude. I want to insult my entire fan base. Spoilers, 12 minutes of fucking your mom.
So if you're a fan of retards talking about nothing and yelling various naughty words at their computer monitors, there is no channel that I more highly recommend. I mean, he often edits out my best jokes to make himself look funnier, but other than that, he's absolutely killing it. And to be frank, his channel has all the benefits of this one in the form of me, plus some other nice things, and he uploads like 10 times as frequently. So just statistically speaking, he's a whole lot more likely to blow up than this channel is. And when he does, I can use this ad as leverage when I gaslight him into paying me. So please don't fuck this up for me, and if you like the funny clips format, check out Mr. Grinch and personally insult him in the comments section so he knows I sent you. Alright, back to the good stuff. Being the bright young man between the ages of 18 and 35 that I know you are, you've probably already noticed that the gameplay of Amnesia the Bunker is pretty different from prior Amnesia titles. It retains the physics-based puzzles and general environmental interaction, of course, but drops a massive fucking pile of weapons, tools, and accessories on top of it. Running and hiding is no longer your only option. In fact, it's very often not even a good option, as the beast will frequently be able to track you down if he saw you enter an area, and if you happen to be bleeding, he will definitely come and finish you off. Instead, you need to injure him to briefly scare him off or block his path to you with gas or fire, then get far enough away that he loses your trail. Combine this gameplay loop with a very limited inventory, procedurally generated item spawns, a locker code system that incentivizes exploration, and a decent little crafting system, and I think they struck gold here. And there's items everywhere around this bunker. You shouldn't ever really be without options. You're far more likely to be in the situation of having to drop items to pick up others. No one or two strategies is going to carry you through every encounter because you're always going to have different tools at your disposal at different times. Other than Brick, of course. Brick is your best friend and he should be sought out everywhere. Now, as far as second-to-second traversal through the bunker, there's a relatively simple gameplay structure in place. You want to be as quiet as possible to keep the beast from coming to investigate, but being quiet simply isn't always possible. There are doors that need to be broken down, machines that need to be turned on, a very noisy flashlight that needs to be fucking pull-started, rats that need to be disposed of, and if you happen to trigger one of the many traps laying around, grenades that need to be ran from. Even the most knowledgeable and careful of players are going to make a lot of noise several times, and that's where the aforementioned escape strategies come into play. And all of that is, of course, assuming you've fueled the generator and have the area's lights on, because if you don't, Lambert doesn't chill in the tunnels waiting for you to make a move, he roams the halls and inspects the rooms, making traversal a whole lot more difficult, on top of the fact that, predictably, you can't see shit. Light management mechanics were another thing I criticized somewhat extensively in Rebirth for being half-baked, easy to the point of pointlessness, and unimmersive in how they were implemented. And Frictional must have come to a similar conclusion, because Bunker flies way the fuck back in the other direction, making the dark more dangerous and obstructive to your progress than ever before. Now, there's gas cans all over the place, and eventually you'll even find a fueling station where you can fill empty bottles for free. So if you're playing with a keen mind, you'll probably only be caught in a blackout once or twice. Bringing fuel back to the generator just has to be balanced with the several other important item pickups in your limited inventory space. Balance across the board is something Bunker excels at. Everything they've added to shake up the Amnesia formula is implemented in a way that doesn't detract from the things that made prior Frictional games such a powerful experience for me. The need to hurry and get back to the safe room before the lights go out is balanced with a need to avoid the beast and make sure you acquire enough resources to make the outing worth the fuel you just spent. The need to keep the beast at bay when he does come out is balanced with a need to waste as few of your more valuable resources as possible, because practically every single item can be used to help you in a variety of ways. Where Rebirth kind of felt like a long corridor filled with unabsorbing set pieces that's world and gameplay didn't immerse me any better than the story did, Bunker is exactly the opposite. The setting is a small, highly detailed, multifaceted environment in which almost every room is not just its own engaging little puzzle and scavenger hunt the first time you play, but every time you replay after. Every nook and cranny is not only worth going through, but is interesting to go through. Now, because I'd feel like a hack if I didn't have some sort of minor criticism of the gameplay, I will say that I think the experience could be improved by making the lighter a consistent item pickup in a relatively early location rather than a random locker item. Because like half of your offensive, defensive, and utility options rely on fire in some capacity, while your means of making fire is a randomized locker item that you might acquire very late or simply never acquire. Some things are just easier to do with a lighter, while others are completely impossible to do without one. I get that randomized item spawns are a huge part of that light immersive sim thrill they're going for to make playthroughs feel different, but the way that the gameplay is different when you don't have lighter access isn't different in any meaningful way, it's just worse. There's the argument that it forces you to be creative, but it can just as often result in you having to do some scuffed ass bullshit, or just tank rat bites and deal with the consequences because there's no alternative in the moment. And it just doesn't feel good to have a storage chest full of tools that you can't use because the essential ingredient is arbitrarily being kept from you. I really don't think that the, intensity or strategy of the game would suffer from players having the choice to seek out the lighter in a specific location. In fact, I think it's the kind of item that would work incredibly well as an intentional, specifically placed reward because of everything it does to expand your arsenal. But again, this is the one criticism that I can think of against an otherwise incredibly thoughtful gameplay system. Now, because I try to be well-rounded when I talk about things, I spent some time perusing the game's negative reviews, and not with the intent of putting anyone down, but just to see where detractors are coming from. And just like I've invoked Frictional's prior game, Amnesia Rebirth, several times to help explain why Bunker is such a step forward in the series, there's a lot of love for Rebirth in the negative Bunker reviews to rationalize why, in their view, it's a bad game or a step backwards for the series. And I think that fact does a lot to tell us about the mindset of a person who is going to struggle to enjoy Bunker. I'll give a couple examples. For me and a lot of other people, Rebirth's gameplay felt incredibly easy, the puzzles often felt incredibly silly, and this resulted in a much less immersive experience. But if you found Rebirth to be a very tense game with environmental puzzles you enjoyed, I would almost kind of expect that Bunker's very open-ended and hands-off world design might frustrate you. Me and many others also found the story and moral dilemmas of Rebirth to be ham-fisted, boring, and not nearly as thought-provoking as Frictional thought they were. If you're in the group of people who were completely enamored with Rebirth's story and genuinely found its moral quandaries to be engaging, however, then Bunker's more sparse and passive storytelling is probably going to feel underwhelming or disappointing by comparison. And we can go round and round like that all day. And obviously, most Frictional fans probably like both games to an extent. It doesn't need to be a one or the other type of thing. And I would never earnestly put someone down just for liking things that I don't, or vice versa. I just think it's important that we're honest about why we like or dislike things, and if we're going to take very hardline stances, we at least can rationalize them well, and not say goofy shit like, Amnesia the Bunker doesn't understand horror, while using logic that immediately implodes under the lightest bit of scrutiny. In summation, all I really want to say is, long live Frictional, man. They stumbled once, but they found their footing once more, and I cannot wait to see what's next. There's definitely some components of the game that I didn't want to give away or go into too much detail on, so if there's something you're still curious about, feel free to let me know. In addition, I always want to hear about the media and topics you guys would like to see me cover, so do not hesitate to make requests. Other than that, I'll talk to you guys later.